When the Rebbe gave the Sikha, we heard the Sikha. Everyone who heard the Sikha was in shock. We heard many Sikhas where the Rebbe spoke about things that he was upset about, that were painful. Mi Yehudi Sikhas about Shtochim, people that want to give away land to Seni Yisrael. The Sikhas on Hey Teves, about the Svarim. The Sikhas about preserving the Shchuna. A lot of internal things, but never, ever have we heard such words like we heard that night. I did everything I can. Everything I did was leheva v'larik. I'm giving it over to you. From now on, you do all that you can. These words send shockwaves throughout the whole world and every single Lubavitch community. The tone was very emotional. You can hear that in the recording, in the video. And the words sounded like despair, chas v'shalom, like giving up. I did everything I can. It didn't help. So now you do it. However, after the initial shock, people did exactly what the Rebbe said in the Sikha. They got together and they met, had meetings here in Crown Heights, in other places around the world to think, what could we do? What should we do? And it became clear to everybody that this is totally not the Rebbe's language. Despair, Yush, giving up, these words don't exist in the Rebbe's vocabulary. In all the letters of the Rebbe to people, in all the sikhs publicly, in Yechidus privately, this is something which the Rebbe never gave room for, despair. And it can be that the Rebbe was saying this now to the Chassidim around the world. And the conclusion was that the Rebbe is telling us something, it must be something out of the ordinary, something extremely radical, but it's definitely not despair. In fact, the next week, it was a week, a little bit over a week, Sazriya Mitzaira, there was a Farbrengen. And that Farbrengen was printed in the newspaper, published, Muga, edited by the Rebbe. And in the beginning of the Sikha, the Rebbe refers to Kochos Nissen, and the Rebbe says these words, Shebi Yameinu Eila, these days mamish, at the end of Chodesh Nissen. In the footnote, it says, referring to Kochos Nissen, in the year of Aren Flois, there was Kolu Kolakitzin Kipshute Mamish. What occurred was a case, Kipshute Mamish. Not that I was talking about a case that's going to be in the future, but about something that already happened. That this day there was a case, Kipshute Mamish. So that appears to be telling us that actually something positive happened on that day, a case, a certain phase of Geula came to an end. Especially after the Sikha, for the next 11 months, as we know that this Sikha was exactly 11 months until Chav Zayin Adar. This was Chav Zayin Kochos Nissen, and Chav Zayin Kochos Adar was exactly 11 months later. During these 11 months, the Rebbe spoke about Moshiach in an unprecedented way. And the Rebbe published the Sikhs, publicized them in the newspapers, and the Rebbe was Magia the Sikhs, which clearly shows us that actually things were moving forward, not the other way around. Just to mention some of the most incredible things that were said during these 11 months, amongst many more. Parshas Nase Nun Aleph, the Rebbe said that we already witnessed in the past, that this is the year that Melech HaMashiach nigla by. In Parshas Shoftim, the Rebbe said that this message of Egias Mangul Aschem and Hinei Zeba is being pronounced as a nevuah. And once it's pronounced as a nevuah, it's irreversible. Also said the fact that when Moshiach is going to come, everyone will have nevuah. Like it says, "V'eshpech ruchi akol basar, v'nivu b'neichem u'b'nei seichem," that the inyan of nevuah, the return of nevuah, has already begun. In Vayakel Nun Beis, the Rebbe says that Kibbutz Golius has already begun, with the fact that hundreds of thousands of Yidden from all over the world, and especially Russia, have come out and going to Eretz Yisrael. In Parshat Mishpatim Nun Beis, the Rebbe said that the Nevuah v'kitzach habesim li'itin, that the swords will be turned into plowshares, that Nevuah has already begun to be fulfilled. In the Sikh of Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavel, that the process of building the third Beis Hamikdash, the beginning stages have already begun. In Vayishlach Nun Beis, the Rebbe said Avedas HaBirurim has already been completed. Avedas HaBirurim, which we know, according to Chassidus and Kabbalah, that's what the Golus is all about, elevating the sparks, that has been completed. And this is something which can only be known to a Navi, an ordinary person, no matter how brilliant, how intelligent he is. With intelligence, he could never know whether all the sparks have been elevated or not. This is a heavenly thing. In Parshas Vayera, the Rebbe said in every generation there's a potential Moshiach. In our generation, it has already been revealed. In Chaisara, to the Kines HaShluchim Eilami, the Rebbe told the Shluchim they already completed the beginning of the Shlichus, the middle phase of the Shlichus, and they completed the Shlichus completely. And Yutas Kislev Nun Beis, the Rebbe said, we're already in Moshe Mashiach. When we look at all this and everything else that was said, it's clear that the Rebbe did not announce that there was Chas v'Sholom, some sort of a setback. So we're going backwards, or we stopped moving forward. On the contrary, it's clear that after the Sikha, things were propelled so much more in terms of going forward in the process of coming of Mashiach. But on the other hand, it was clear, and you hear in the tone of voice from the Rebbe that the Rebbe was very upset, and it was something very painful. So the way a lot of people understood this is that this Sikha, the Rebbe was giving us amazing good news, and on the other hand, not such good news. When the Rebbe said the words, I did everything I can, this wasn't an expression of frustration or despair, chas v'sholom, like we said before. This was actually amazing news. The Rebbe was saying, I did, and I finished and completed the Avoda that I need to do as a Rebbe. That part was completed. And like it says in the Sikha of Sazriya Mitzayra, there was a case. In other words, a certain phase of Golus came to an end and completed on that day. However, the other news, which was not so great, was we didn't complete our part that we need to do. Had we completed our part that we need to do on the same day that the Rebbe completed his part, then Chav Ches Nisan Tov Shnun Aleph, 30 years earlier, could have been the day of Geula Mitzvah Shloma. And that's what was so painful. To explain this a little bit better, there was a Sikha that the Rebbe gave, which is very similar to this Sikha. It was given a few years earlier, but in a totally different tone. I'm referring to the Sikha of Purim, Tavshin Mem Zayin. It was a long Sikha with a lot of details. The Rebbe spoke about the fact that this happened. There were so many kitzim that were given, and how come it's still not happening? And the Rebbe there said that up until now, the Avoda of bringing Moshiach was primarily in the hands of the Nasi. Now we're coming to a time where it's going over, those were the Rebbe's words, from the Nasi to every single individual, to every man, woman, and child. And the Rebbe explained that this is connected to the Rambam. And the Rebbe said that he himself reiterated this Rambam many, many times, that every person should see the world as if it's in a scale that's perfectly balanced. And when the scale is perfectly balanced, one little detail could tip the scale. That every person has the ability, machshava achas, dibur echad, Ma'aseh echad could tip the scale and bring Mashiach. And therefore, the Rebbe explained that now that's where we're holding. So in a sense, when the Rebbe gave this Sikha, if you look at the Sikha, Chavches Nisan, and the Sikha Purim, Tavshim Mem Zayin, it's the same idea. The Rebbe is saying, I'm giving it over to you. This wasn't the Rebbe Chas v'Shalom moving away or abandoning. The Rebbe is saying, now the time has come that every individual has to do this Avoda, the final stages of bringing Mashiach. And I'm giving it over to you means I'm empowering you. I'm giving you the Kochos to be able to do it. Like it says in Rashi, reference to Avraham Avinu, Habrachos Misuris Biyodecha. The Eibishter said to Avraham, I'm giving you over the brachas. What did that mean? The power that the Eibishter has to bench, he's giving over that power and he's empowering Avraham Avinu. And Avraham Avinu empowered Yitzchak and so on. So the Rebbe is telling us that he's empowering us. But the Avoda has to be our Avoda now. There's something that comes to mind which is similar to this and helps us understand this a little bit better, was an incident that happened Shvuas Tavshin Chav Dalet. Shvuas Tavshin Chav Dalet was a Fabrengen, 1964. And Rebbe, in those years, always spoke about the Yidden in Russia, that they're stuck in Russia behind the Iron Curtains, a bracha for them to sing a Shia Samecha. And at that Fabrengen, the Rebbe mentioned something. And then the Rebbe said, no. The Eilam didn't understand what is it that the Rebbe wants us to do. The Rebbe said again, no, still nothing happened. And the Rebbe was very, very upset. You could see clearly the Rebbe was in a lot of pain. And the Rebbe said that if all the Chassidim now would have said L'chaim for the Yidden in Russia, then all the Yidden of Russia would be able to come out. Clearly it was an Eis Rotzen. And if we would have said L'chaim, that would have brought this Eis Rotzen to fruition, that all the Yidden in Russia would come out. So if you look at it, you think to yourself, just a few years ago, a few years before, I think it was 11 years earlier, Tavshin Yud Gimel, 1953, at a Fabrengen on Purim, the Rebbe told a story of something that happened in Russia with the Tsar. The Rebbe said in a mimer, which was a second mimer, something unprecedented, never did that before. The Rebbe lifted his hand a certain way. There are pictures of how the Rebbe did this. And after that, it was discovered that during that time, as the Rebbe was speaking, that's when Stalin, who was a Russia, passed away. And as a result of that, a terrible gzeira that was going on at the time, called the Doctor's Plot, all the Yidden in Russia were in Sakana. Everything was canceled, and the Yidden that were in jail came out of jail, and it was all batal muvutl. So the Rebbe did it himself. Why couldn't the Rebbe just take all the Yidden out of Russia if it was an Eis Rotzen? So clearly it was an Eis Rotzen. The Rebbe did whatever he does as a Rebbe to bring it to a certain point. And now Lamaila, what was expected was that we need to do something very simple, just to say L'chaim for the Yidden in Russia. And apparently the Rebbe couldn't tell us what we need to do. It had to be totally, completely on our own initiative. And because we didn't do that, so at that time, the Yidden didn't go out of Russia, and that happened, Baruch Hashem, years later. So the same is here, that there's something that we need to do, and that's what the Rebbe is saying, the part that he needs to do. I did that. I completed that. Not only I did, I completed it. And now, be aware that you have to do this, every individual. I'm sure the story was mentioned before, how there was a woman who went over to the Rebbe by dollars, and she was crying. She went through a tragedy. And the only thing that gave her hope was her emunah that Moshiach is coming, the way the Rebbe spoke about it. And after the Sikha, she felt the Rebbe sort of giving up. And she walked by the Rebbe for dollars and was crying and said, Rebbe, you can't leave us. You can't stop. You have to bring Mashiach. And the Rebbe answered her, if I'm your Rebbe, then listen to what I'm telling you. To bring Mashiach now is in your hands. And he pointed his fingers to all the people in the room, everyone. In other words, this is where the Avoda is now. And what is it that we need to do? So the Rebbe spelled it out. We need to learn in Yonim and Torah about Mashiach Geula. We have to strengthen our emunah in Mashiach. We have to publicize to ourselves, our families, and to wherever we can, the Rebbe's Psuras Hagula and the Vuas Hagula, that Mashiach's coming is imminent. Not just Emunah in Mashiach in general, but Mashiach's coming is imminent. And we have to be Makabel Mashiach. In dozens and dozens of Sikha, the Rebbe says, the Avoda has already been completed. The only thing left to do is to be Makabel Mashiach. As it says in the Sikha of Pashas Mishpatim, Nun Aleph, that year, we were saying Kapitel Peites, the Rebbe's Kapitel, where it says, Matzasi David Abdi, B'Shem Kochi Meshachtiv. I found my servant David, and I anointed him with the holy oil. And the Rebbe said in that Sikha that Mashiach has already been anointed and appointed. All that needs to happen now is the Kabbalah's HaMalchus of Mashiach through the nation. And similarly, the Rebbe said earlier in the Ches and the Sikh of Beis Nissen that Ein Melech B'Layam, a king needs to have the Am accept him in order to be empowered. And the Rebbe said that's why they used to announce Yechi HaMelech. And Melech HaMashiach is not an exception, that in order for him, his Malchus to be empowered, he needs us to accept his Malchus. That is, and these are the things that the Rebbe points out that we need to do. This is our Avoda. Just to explain this a little bit more specifically, what does it mean this is our Avoda? People ask a question that in the Sikhs, the Rebbe keeps saying everything was done, the Avoda was completed. All we need to do is just be Makabel Mashiach. So that means it's not complete. There's still something to do. So why is the Rebbe saying everything is completed? Similarly, the Sikha to the Shluchim. Well, the Rebbe said, the Avoda of Shlichus has been completed. But being that we're still here, there must be something else that we need to do, and that is the Makabel Mashiach. But he just finished saying everything is completed. If there's something to do, it's not completed. If it's completed, there should be nothing to do. So the way Chassidim understand the Sikha is that it says, we're in Golas because of Chatoeinu. So we need to do tshuva to heal spiritually. So up until now, the reason why we were still in Golas, because we still didn't correct all the ruchnis, the kinyanim we need to correct. We weren't worthy yet. We weren't deserving. We were still unfit to go out of Golas. It's like a person who's chas v'shalom sick, and as a result of that, he's in the hospital, and he still can't go home because he's still unfit to go home. He's not healthy enough. However, here the Rebbe testifies, the Avoda is complete. We're all right. We're all worthy, and we're all, everything we went through collectively, all the Torah, all the mitzvahs, all the Mesiras Nefesh, throughout all the generations, we're all ready to go out of Golas. And no one should say, Chaz Hashem, that we don't deserve or we're not right. We're all right. So what now? Now what we need to do is things to bring Mashiach himself. And the Rebbe's words in Chai Sarah, the way the Rebbe says it is that everything was already complete and the Avoda of the Shluchim is complete. All we need to do is to be Makabel Mashiach to enable him to do his shlichus to take us out of Golas. Or in the words that the Rebbe gave to the chief rabbis when he met with them in the beginning of Tov Shalom Beis, the Rebbe said, the Geula is by the threshold, by the door. All we need to do is open the door and bring Geula in. Or the words in Pashas Vayishlach, the Rebbe said, Avoda of Berurim, elevating the sparks, has been completed. There's no longer Shviras HaKelim. The vessels have been elevated, completed. Now the Avoda is to bring down the earth of light of Geula into the world. That's our Avoda now. And perhaps we can use as an example, this week, Pasha Shmini, we know that on the 8th day, the Mishkan was complete, but the Shekhinah didn't come down. And Aaron was very broken. He thought it was his fault. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, V'hinoyam, and after that, the Shekhinah came down. In other words, the Mishkan was built. Until that point, the Shekhinah couldn't come down because there was no Mishkan. It wasn't complete. At this point, there was a Mizbeach, and there was a Shulchan, and there was a Kiyar, and the walls were set up, and the poles were set up. Everything was in place. There was nothing more to do in order to make the Mishkan a Keli for the Shekhinah. Now what they needed to do is something specific to bring down the Shekhinah. And that is when Moshe Rabbeinu said, V'hinayim, that specifically brought down the Shekhinah. So these are the things that Rebbe is telling us now. Now, we're not doing things. We're doing the same Torah, the same mitzvahs, all the mitzvahs, but what we're accomplishing is not making us more worthy of Mashiach. That's already a done deal. The Rebbe testifies. What we're doing now is to enable Mashiach and to draw down the light of Geula into the world. And that's by being Mekabel Mashiach. Kabbalah's Mashiach enables him to take us out. Having Emunah in Mashiach empowers Mashiach to take us out. And learning Torah about Yoni Mashiach Geula, that is what brings down the light of Mashiach into the world and makes this all happen. And to conclude, when the Rebbe said these words, Tut alt was kent, those words include and encompass both ends of the spectrum. On one hand, there are people that say, me, what could I do? I'm a simple person. I'm not a ish kloli. I don't have big contacts. I'm a nobody, just a simple little guy. What can I do? Or a child is just a simple child. Tut alt was kent means the Rebbe is saying, I'm not expecting you to do what you can do. Do what you can do, even if it's something very small. Do what you can do, and this will help accomplish what needs to be accomplished. Somebody once wrote to the Frierdiker Rebbe that the reason why he's not spiritually the way he should be is because he didn't learn enough, he doesn't know enough. And the Frierdiker Rebbe answered him, it'll suffice that you'll be in a way that's consistent with what you do know. That'll also be enough. So just do what you can do. On the other hand, it's also speaking to the person on the other end of the spectrum. Somebody who's capable to do bigger things in order to bring Mashiach, to affect and influence and inspire a lot of more people to do Mashiach, someone who's very creative and has that opportunity, then tut alt was kent, we can't be yetzer by doing less. We should do everything that we can possibly do. So now when we look back 30 years later, this was said 30 years ago, the truth of the matter is that we can't even describe in words how much was accomplished regarding the subject of Mashiach. Thousands of shiurim, hundreds of books that were publicized, songs that were composed, toys, every area that there is for adults, for children, for men, for women. There's so much going on to bring Mashiach into that world. And we see that even circles, those circles that ridiculed saying we want Mashiach now, ridicule the subject of Mashiach, they are also inspired and they're transformed. That now we see in so many places, shiurim of Mashiach, books being published on Mashiach, speakers and lecturers pointing out how the events of the world that are going on is clearly pointing to the fact that we're seeing the imminence of Mashiach. And we have to say, Ashreinu, Matev Chalkeinu, how fortunate we are that we're Chassidim of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe is guiding us and telling us what we need to do. And we have the shlichus to bring the whole world to be inspired and to ultimately bring the Mashiach. And of course, everyone understands that what's going on right now, this moment, on this Yom Zakai, a Farbrengen that's encompassing the whole world, Abbas Yisrael and Agdus Yisrael on such a scale is something which is surely has the power, and you hear us in that we should see Beinei Basar to tip the scale. And we should see this galus of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach take of Miyad Mamish, take us out of Golus, and the end of the Zoom would be in Yerushalayim HaKodesh with the Rebbe together.